Welcome everyone to a special little video. As you know, Persona 5 is a game beloved by many, including ourselves, and is simultaneously one scorned by plenty, resulting in a hurricane of opinions that'll probably engulf our planet in the coming years. However, the three of us are here to halt the approaching apocalypse by addressing Persona 5's biggest critics and debating their hot takes. That's right, this is it. No more criticism after today. This is the end. Alongside me today, we've got Michelle, otherwise known as Seniorish. If you'd like to say hi. Yeah.
That's me. My computer's broken, but yeah.
You know what? Good enough for me. And also here, we've got a new guest here, a friend here named...
Shut the...
Or, that brain. My brain is not working today. Levi. I'll crop that so that it says Levi the first time so I don't sound like an idiot.
Are you sure that you'll do that?
You know what? We've been tired today, and that's the perfect mindset to address the most intellectual and least intellectual criticisms of our favorite game.
But yeah, I'm Levi. I usually just do gacha stuff, but I am at Ryuji Persona 5 on Twitter, so I have rights.
You know what? Totally fair. Yeah, so all their stuff will be linked below. Yeah, and just to kind of give an idea of what we're doing here, I made a Twitter thread kind of going over, like, asking people what their biggest criticisms of Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal were. There will be spoilers for Royal and Persona 5, not strikers, so you don't have to worry about that, but for the main two games, be wary. But yeah, I've got some more general criticisms that I saw spammed a billion times that I'll go over first, and then after that, I'll get into the more nitty-gritty, so show some specific tweets, and we'll be good to go. All right.
On today's episode of Oziach, we'll be discovering how poorly the education system has failed our nation's reading comprehension.
You know, there's a couple good eggs in here. We'll see. All right, so to kick things off, a classic for Royal. This is going over the more general ones. This one was spammed to high hell. The game is too easy, referring to Royal. I agree.
I do agree, yes.
However,
Yeah.
I don't mind, which is a good place to start this this addressing of criticisms. But I think, like, and you guys can chip in however much you want. Say whatever you're thinking. I don't like the insistence of challenge inherently is better or necessary, because it is nice to have challenge, but just because a game isn't difficult, like you've played Kirby games, those games are not hard, and I get it's like different demographics, but difficulty doesn't inherently mean better. And I think the gameplay is fluid enough and kind of gives enough to think about whenever you're fighting that the tools you're given, even if it makes you overpowered, make it fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Persona 5 Royal I consider to be the most fun JRPG I've ever played, just in terms of gameplay mechanics. I would have liked the game to be harder, definitely, because, like, out of, like, modern Persona, P4 to me feels like the one that's actually hard in a fair way, because 3 is hard in a way that makes me want to burn Atlus, and 5 Royal is just easy. But 5 Royal is also the one I have the most fun with, so I don't care that much.
It's also kind of hard to make an RPG inherently hard, because you can always just grind up. Like, you can be like, oh, this is hard, let me just go into Mementos and fight the Reaper 50 times so I'm level 99. Now everything's easy. Oh, the game is too easy.
Yeah,
like, there's a balance that the player needs to find as well to make the game easy or harder for them.
Yeah, most RPGs are, like, really dynamic in how you can tackle them, because there are a lot that, like, make sure you don't have to grind if you don't want to, but you can get that incentive of, if I want to grind up and get more powerful, you can do that. It's good. Moving on from that one.
I was going to say, it's also the fact that Persona, although it has its moments of difficulty, it's not mainline SMT. It's not made to be difficult. That's not the main focus of the game.
Yeah, it's a much more casual experience. If you do want a more hardcore RPG, play SMT. Those games are challenging and fun. That too. Most roguelikes, honestly. All right, here we've got immediately a really fun double whammy that I know you guys already laughed about.
Yeah.
So first we've got Kasumi in Royal is underused, which I find fun because I believe a lot of the sources I saw mentioned like she's barely relevant to the plot until third semester, and like she doesn't really show up much, and they wish they had her more, and they wish they could use her before that point.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
I'm of the opinion that Sumi was used well, and that I like her entire inclusion in the game.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think that, considering both this point and the next point, I think that they found like a nice middle ground where they inserted her enough that she didn't feel overbearing, but also she didn't feel like she was just only in the third semester and nothing else. I really can't think of any like examples that I could compare to, though. I was gonna say Marie from 4, but she's pretty evenly inserted as well.
For better or for worse. Yeah, but that brings up a very nice segue into that next point. Kasumi is overused in Royal. She's constantly there beforehand with when she shouldn't be. I wish she just was only in the parts where she needs to be relevant to the plot. Stuff along those lines. They just constantly see her being shoved in. And I think it's blatantly, like, interesting. This is, like, the perfect example of showing how different two people can perceive the same game.
Mm-hmm.
Of her being, like, forced in. Because I do agree, and this gets covered a little more later. I feel that the one time I feel like, not overused, but I feel like Kasumi's a little forced in, is the initial scene in the casino. I just don't like that scene. I think it was perfect without it.
Yeah.
But, like, otherwise, I think her inclusion, like, you can tell that it's new and that it's, like, a separate thing. But it's not a detractor at all. It still feels like it matters and was put into a good place.
She also has, like, what, at most, like... She has, like, at least, like, I'd say one major scene per palace arc, for the most part.
Yeah, just about.
Like, she, apart from, obviously, third semester and, like, the very beginning of the game where she shows up a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I don't know, I also appreciate how she is used in the story, because she kind of helps add to questions about what the Phantom Thieves are doing from a moral standpoint.
Yeah.
But I really like her. She's great.
She's a friggin' good character. Kind of straying away from, I guess, Royal-specific stuff and getting more into, like, base Persona 5. This is one I've heard a lot with the game when it initially released and kind of a lot of people replaying it, which is that people think that the game starting with, like, a 5-hour-long tutorial for, like, the first chunk of Kamoshida's dungeon is obnoxious and bad.
You ever played a JRPG?
That's
me, it's just JRPGs in general. Like,
well,
they're gonna take a while to get going, unless you're playing Chrono Trigger.
Well, because I think about the fact of a lot of people, get spoiled by, they just want to rush through the dungeon like you can later and just, like, bust through everything. Like, I can deal with this. I'm going to get through it. But the game very much is trying to strike that balance of slowly revealing information to you for the plot, because the plot in Persona is literally 50% of the game, while also getting you those mechanics understood at a decent pace. I get people wanting to, like, not have all the tutorials there and just rush through it, but there is kind of a reason why the tutorials are baked into the actual structure of the jail, because it's trying to put you in circumstances that teach you these well, which kind of require it being structured like that.
It also makes sense thematically, because this is the first time that, that Ren and Ryuji and Anna are actually doing anything like this. Like, obviously before this, they were just regular kids doing school and hanging out. Now they're going in and infiltrating a palace. Like, for them to be able to do that, they should have to learn it first to be able to get to the point where they are later in the game, and they're just rushing through a palace. As the player, it makes sense that, like Adam said, you want to just rush through the palace and get it over and done with, especially in, like, a New Game Plus scenario, which I feel like they could have remove the tutorial in New Game Plus, but thematically it makes
Director does.
more sense to have the tutorial there because it just makes more sense story-wise.
Well, that reminds me, like, there's something that someone said that I think might be included in the more specific batch. I'm not 100% sure.
Mhm.
But, like, people a lot of time think of this and they're like, I wish that Persona 5 New Game Plus had a chapter select.
Mhm.
And I kind of get it, but how would you really do that in, like, a fluid way? Because the game is very much about gradually building yourself up over that calendar.
Yeah,
It's
it
kind
doesn't
of weird
really
to
make
just
sense
insert
for
yourself.
a game.
Yeah, it's weird to insert yourself into December out of nowhere.
Yeah, and how does chapter select work in the case of, like, is it going to be like I start with all my party members doing that? Do I only have the party members I'm supposed to?
What happens to my, like, confidant ranks? Are they all, like, at 0? Can I select how high I want them to be? What happens to the mementos missions? Like, you're literally just losing time that is baked into the game for that sake. So
I'd say the main thing I'd want from something like that, I would have liked a way to easily rematch bosses. That's like the only thing I can think of.
that's
but-
fair. Maybe something like Thieves' Den, like, that could have been cool.
I was thinking like in the jail, like the jail challenges that the twins have, just like harder versions of each boss that you can rematch for a challenge. I would have liked that, but like I don't think a chapter select really works when you actually think about how many technicals goes into that.
Yaoed about, but you can only use physical attacks.
Yeah.
Alright, for the next big one, and you'll notice my little note here, it's bad pacing, no clarification. Because I saw like 50 billion people mention that Persona 5 has terrible pacing. And you know, if you
But they
think that,
didn't.
that's fine. That's fine. If you think that, that's fine. But like, even people I know closer, they just said, yeah, terrible pacing. And I would ask for them to clarify, and I got nothing.
I don't get what this means, because this is like one of the most common criticisms I've ever seen of Persona 5, and also this also comes from Persona 4 fans, which makes me question what. But
If I have to share enough goodwill for this opinion, I did see like a couple people were like, yeah, the game starts super strong and ends super strong, and the middle isn't as strong. And like, I think the middle parts of that game are really good. And I don't think they're as like transcendent in quality as like Kamoshida's arc or Maruki's arc, or like many would disagree, but like Shido's or Yaoed about whatever. But I don't think a lot of people understand what like a narrative climax is. It's called rising action.
yeah,
You need your hook. Like for writing, you need your hook at the start that gets people in, and then you kind of, what the game does is kind of get you into a rhythm of normalizing things while slowly building up the tension of it until you get the big bang 3-course finish at the end of P5.
I mean, because there's a big difference between a game hitting its rhythm and a game actually falling off at the middle, of course. But yeah, Roy wasn't bad at the middle. It's just kind of, it's a bit more normal, and you need those more normal chapters of the game to make once like the casino and a lot of like the things that start breaking up the mold. That's what makes those that break up the mold more interesting.
Yeah, you need a contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so next, we got a classic here. Morgana Haru arc, bad. So basically just the Okumura's Palace, which, if you've seen this channel before, or I've seen your recommended spammed, you know at least my kind of older opinion on that. I like, that is easily one of the biggest places you can criticize a large portion of the game. It's not that bad, though. It's like, it's a little underwhelming in execution, but stuff like Morgana, quote-unquote, stealing Haru's spotlight, a term which I feel like I kind of coined, unfortunately, because I feel like it also does not do that part justice. I don't know, it's... Morgana's arc there is fine. The only major issue with it is that they could have let Haru have more activeness in it. And the initial fight that causes Morgana to book it starts dumb and out of nowhere. But that's kind of it.
Yeah, I I don't agree that it's bad, but I see where people come from when they say it. There are other ways to get Haru content if you really need it. You could actually do her confidant, even though it's really late into the game, or you could play Strikers because that's got a lot of Haru in it, which is great because she really needed it. Like when they announced Strikers, I know we're not supposed to be talking about spoilers, but when they announced Strikers, the one thing I wanted mostly out of the story was just give Haru something because she didn't really get anything.
It does her
Morgana
a lot
just
of
kind
justice.
Yeah, Morgana just kind of like comes in and sort of takes over her arc, but not in a bad way. It kind of makes sense because she's she's kind of just forced into the role of the Phantom Thieves, whereas the rest of them kind of get to like discover that these people that they're meeting are the Phantom Thieves, and then see the injustices, and then kind of decide to become a Phantom Thief. Whereas Haru is kind of just pushed into the role with Morgana at first, and then gets that extra, like her actual awakening later.
Which is a little clever, honestly. I like that. I like her like half awakening because she isn't really committed to it before. I like that bit.
She's also not as painfully underdeveloped as I think a lot of people claim.
No, again, especially if you do her confidant. It's a really good confidant. It's one of the best.
It's like one of my top 3 favorite confidants. There's her stuff in third semester. There's what actually is there in the Okumura arc, which is pretty good. And also there's the beauty thief scene, which is one of the funniest moments in the game. So
she also gets it was very little, but she gets maybe 1 or 2 extra scenes in Royal, because I noticed that they introduced her not to the party but to the story a lot earlier than they had before. Like she's around in the school earlier, and she has voiced lines earlier. I think as early as maybe around the time that the player sees, or not the player, the party sees her at the fireworks festival when she's getting into the limo. I think at around that time there's like an extra scene where she has voiced lines, and you can interact with her in the school, which I don't think was in base P5. So clearly they saw that that people were complaining that, you know, Haru doesn't get this extra screen time because Morgana kind of takes over. So they didn't fix it, but they put extra stuff in there, and then they did fix it in Strikers.
Yeah.
All right. Going back to more specific Royal things, Royal didn't add enough to justify having costed $60, which this goes alongside the people initially who were like, why couldn't this have just been DLC? And how?
I paid $90 for this game.
Yeah. I've purchased this game 3 times. I bought it in Japanese, which cost me $400 because I imported the Straight Flush Edition or the Royal Flush Edition.
Oh wow!
I can't read Japanese well enough to be able to play it, so I had the game for a year and I just didn't play it.
Yeah.
Then I bought it digitally, and I also bought a steelbook version. So you know, paying for Persona is not a thing I have a problem with. But I would honestly say that Royal did add enough to justify the cost of $60 or however much it cost for you.
That's the thing, like, it's obvious to the people watching here, like, we do have a strong bias for P5. We love this game, but it doesn't really shield us from, you know, actually discussing a lot of the criticisms here, even if we disagree. Like, we're willing to see a lot of the critiques. However, Royal is a completely, like, it goes by the same basic narrative for most of the game, I get that. But the gameplay is so revamped and retooled to be a much better experience on a core level that it felt extremely fresh to me. Like, early on in the Kamoshida's Palace, you feel a couple of the new additions, but it's like, okay, it's basically just P5 again. And once you get to Madarame's and onwards, you're like, okay, I'm feeling it. And then, like, I loved third semester a ton. It's my favorite thing here. And that's not, like, a lot of people just go, oh, it just adds, like, 20 hours of new gameplay at best. Some people say 10. I think they were just speed running. That's not the only thing that's added. And even then, that justifies a lot of the cost. But the entire game is a much better experience that, in my opinion, warrants it being considered a new title. And warrants a proper price like that.
I got at
I
least
would pay
30 hours of new content, not including Tycoon.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I would pay $60 for Persona Tycoon by itself.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, we got Thieves Den. We got, like, I guess technically 2 new party members, if you want to put it that way. Whole new dungeon. Memento's completely revamped. Whole new additions to the soundtrack. It's a lot. It's
And
like, stuff
two
throughout.
two new confidants as well. 3 if you count the fact that Akechi's is both different and better.
Yeah.
That's I won't speak for all of us, but I do think it's better.
It's definitely better.
Yeah. A lot of the game's, like, layout has just been revamped. Freaking Kichi Joja. It's good. The game is good.
I was gonna say, Adam's like, yeah, the game felt pretty similar. Then, bam, grappling hook.
Alright, finally getting to one I think we can all agree with. Beating up Ryuji was bad.
Yes.
Absolutely.
If we want to talk about genuine critiques for this game, yeah, Ryuji getting beaten up after Shido's Palace was one of the greatest writing mistakes in any Persona game, next to Ken's Social Link in P3 Portable. So, yeah, it's... Because I get what the trope is going for of, man, you almost died, I'm so mad, Japan. But it could have been handled with a bit more sense of what actually just happened instead of Ryuji almost died, let's kill him for real. Like, he didn't move after that. I think he just died. In my copy, he never showed up again.
Yeah, he's
copy
just
for self
removed.
upload,
He's
personalized.
removed from the game.
He
He just his confidant isn't even there anymore. Like, it's just gone. All of the chariot personas are also removed from the game.
Listen, they just
he
added Kasumi to give you another one to flesh out the roster once he was gone.
It's just, I don't know, like, it is definitely, it is my least favorite part of the entire game. But also, no, that does not, that's, because anytime someone says, like, yeah, Atlus wrote Ryuji poorly and the fan thieves just treat him like shit, I feel like that's the only example anyone ever uses.
The thing.
And I'm like, no, this one out of character moment does not show the dynamic of this entire group over the 130 plus hour game.
You have to acknowledge, again, yeah, like you said, the other literally 100-something hours of context. Ryuji being the character who is there the longest outside of your own. So, and I guess Morgana, if you want to count it that way. Ah, boy.
And you know, it's an anime game. You're gonna get anime tropes. Like, every single time they have a hot scene spring, you know, even when the boys aren't trying to spy, somehow they get caught and then they get pummeled to death. You know, you just get that when you get anime games. Eventually, you just kind of have to go, yep, okay, let me check off my tropes list.
Yeah, like, and you can criticize those tropes for being there, because they definitely can be criticized and have been done better other places. But it doesn't knock, it's not the cornerstone of this character that once you pull it out, everything else falls apart.
Plus, Ryuji kind of gets, like, beaten up metaphorically by just, like, a lot of bad writing decisions. Like, you know, obviously there's this where he gets beat up literally. There's the scene in, I don't remember which part of Tokyo it is, but it's the scene where he gets approached by those 2 gay guys, and then they changed it in Royal. It's not any better. It's just bad for a different reason. And then also, obviously, the stuff with him and Morgana in the Akumura arc, like, Ryuji just kind of gets slammed with, like, this is the joke character, so we're gonna make all these jokes with him, but they're not gonna be funny. But then when he just speaks normally, that's when he's gonna be funny.
I appreciate the moments where they show him some love, because Ryuji, on the flip side, also has the best moment in Shido's Palace, just on his shoulders, preceding the worst moment in that palace. But the moment before that's really good. So
there's also, in terms of how the way Ryuji is also treated by the cast, does not hold a candle to how shittily Yosuke is treated throughout the entirety of Persona 4.
Yeah.
Like, Ryuji is such a step up from that in terms of comedic character writing.
Man, just for context for the people watching, we also love Persona 4. It's got its issues, though.
I was gonna also say, like, to compare both of them with Junpei, since I've been playing 3 Portable. Junpei is kind of like, I would say, he's like a middle ground between Yosuke and Ryuji, where he's treated shittier than Ryuji, but not as shitty as Yosuke, who just suffers forever. He's poor Yosuke.
And even then, Junpei mostly just gets shit from Yukari. It's mostly just her.
Yeah.
So.
Yukari's our friendly little bully.
Stand Yukari.
Moving on to Tad. There's a big one that there's a more explicit tweet about this later that I think we can put a pin in this, but this is a very fun one just to put out. The cast doesn't feel like they're actually friends and are just together for the sake of the plot.
Sure.
Lies. Absolutely lies.
This is up there for one of my most baffling P5 criticisms. I have like a list of a few that anytime I hear them, I questioned the person's intelligence. Because I'm like, but how? How do you think that?
First of all, they all go to school together except Yusuke, and then obviously Futaba doesn't go to school, and Morgana's a cat. But all the rest of them go to school, so they already kind of know each other.
Morgana does go to school. Morgana does go to school.
He does go to school, yeah, but he's no student is what I meant. So like they already have that connection where they're like, you know, they're at school, so they know that they have to do study together and stuff like that. And then every single time they be to Palace, they have a party. That's like more parties than I've ever been to in my entire life with my actual real life friends. Like, they're friends. These kids, they like each other and they like hanging out with each other. Also, if you don't think they're friends, play Persona 5 Strikers, because guess what? They're friends.
Well, there are also little hangouts they have
together
constantly where different, like, confidence can show up in. Like, I get... Like, there's obviously the moments where Joker's hanging out with them, but there are a lot of moments where they're spending a lot of time together, like Futaba and Morgana, especially. That's a big one that people don't really address a lot. Or, like, Yusuke and Futaba. Futaba being the anti-social character and getting a lot of relations like that is kind of evident. There's also more stuff, like when you see the interactions they have for the showtimes in Royal, where you do see them out and about chatting and having friendly little chats like that. I feel the connection a lot of the time, and a lot of them hanging out. Like, we know that, like, Ryuji and An have a connection prior. Makoto and An establish a friendship throughout. Haru and Morgana have a good friendship, same with Makoto. It's, like, a very... I don't get how people don't find their bonds interconnected. Unless, like, I guess they want the game to shove it down your throat, like P4. I'm so sorry, P4, I don't mean to be mean to you today.
I mean to be mean to P4, but we're gonna Persona 4 Golden, greatest remake in history. We're gonna add a beach scene that is like one of the least important things I've seen in a plot. Like, you know, because that's friendship.
That's the thing, because a game like Persona 5, which is kind of off-rail, like, it can have scenes like that where they're going to the beach or going on vacation or something like that, but it actually has a plot purpose alongside it while also feeling like slice of life fun, but it's still being efficient with the time spent, and I appreciate that.
And also, like, and there's also the other thing, which is just, yeah, all of these characters have a very clear bond in being these social outcasts that just get used by the adults in their lives. Like, that's something that all of them immediately bond over, and then from there, and from being Phantom Thieves together, they grow this close friendship.
It's friggin' great.
It's a fun game.
Speaking of great, Oya's Confidant is useless. That's the next critique there.
Ow.
So that's talking about, like, the actual mechanic that you get from her confidant, not the actual storyline.
That's
right?
the thing. They don't clarify, and that's actually something that I find funny, because a lot of people do have this criticism with Oya, where they go, "Yeah, the security meter thing doesn't make a huge difference because I'm sneaky stealthy man, so there's no reason to get it." And first of all, in prior games, you didn't even get unique confidant abilities like that.
Yeah.
Your reward was called Fusion Burst, something which I don't think Persona 5 fans know how fusion works. That's a good enough reward in its own right. But also, another big reason, if you're playing a plot-heavy game like Persona 5, it might matter if, you know, you might want to do it for the plot, because Oya's Confidant has a really good one.
Yeah, one of my favorite Confidant stories outside of party members. And also the fact that, like, as for, like... Because something I like about P5 is that every Confidant feels at least semi-story important, and Oya is one of the most important.
It ties very well into the stuff with Shido.
Yeah, and that not just that, but she's also the one who tells you what Kanashiro's name is and stuff like that. So, like, she's a really important character in the story.
Out of all of the non-party confidants, including Sae and oh my gosh, I can't remember his name, Sojiro, I would say that she's absolutely, like, maybe including Mishima too, like, outside of the party ones, and then Sae, Sojiro, and Mishima, who are, like, kind of very important to the story. I would say that she is the top most important confidant, because she appears in the story. I think she might even appear... Yeah, she appears twice, because we find out Kanashiro's name from her, but she also appears in the Madarame arc.
Yeah. She shows up there. She's investigating Shido at one point. Like, yeah, she appears a few times. And, I mean, that applies to every confidant, but Oya especially.
Man, how can you hate Oya? She's literally Mishima's only friend. Wait.
Also, the personification of drunk Yukiko. Like, who doesn't love that?
That's another thing. People will dismiss Oya a lot because they're like, oh, it's drunk old hag. And I'm like, you know, and I don't think Oya's unattractive at all, but if Oya was more like, I guess, Tei Takemi levels of attractive or something like that, people would be like, dude, this character's great.
I know, right?
If she was Manuela from Three Houses, yeah, everyone would love her.
You know what? You're right. Oh my gosh.
Jeez.
Alright,
she's great. Also, one more thing. Her confidant has Lala in it, who is the best character in all of Shin Megami Tensei.
I'm glad we got more Lala in Royal. It was very important.
Oh my gosh. When she texted me, I cried. I was like, Lala has my number. She's texting me.
Yeah, I love, like, actually and I don't remember if this was in vanilla. I forget, but I know, like, doing the job with Lala is now a part of a Mementos request. And the game was a coward.
I think it is.
Let Joker dress up, and I'm really sad about that. But
I think it is. I think there is because I think there might be multiple Mementos requests revolving around working at that bar. Because you have to, like, listen to specific people on specific days. And I know that because so every time, I'll say this because I'm not ashamed, every time I play a Persona game, I always follow a walkthrough because I want to have 100% of the game. I want to see everything. Despite that, in both Royal and Vanilla P5, I didn't complete all the Mementos requests because I did not go to the bars on the right days to get the missions. And that makes me sad. But because I kept going back to the bar to try and get the missions, I got to spend so much time with Lala, and I just love her.
Grand old time. Alright, getting to the bottom of this list of more general critiques. This one that I was going to say kind of agree with. I basically do agree with it, which is that the DLC in Royal kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like...
That being said, it's not mandatory, so it's bad, but you just don't have to get it if you don't want it. Like, I got it because I wanted it.
Just to give a window into the viewers of where we stand with our like Persona love. I sat there the moment that DLC came to me. I'm like, wow, this is so dumb. It should not cost $60. Like, this is a complete ripoff. And then bought it 10 seconds later. Like, I see the criticism. I just have a problem.
I bought every DLC for Persona 4 Dancing All Night.
I'm so sorry.
I have some standards. I didn't buy any of the DLC for P3 and 5D, because that's stupid.
I also bought all the DLC for P4D. I also bought all of the DLC for Arena Ultimax, like literally like 2 weeks ago when they were like, we're closing down the stores, and I was like, well, better get all of this extra stuff. But yeah, I would say, saying the DLC is bad, I feel like it isn't a criticism at all on either P5 or Royal, because buying the DLC does not add or take anything away from the game except playing different music in battles and wearing different costumes. And if you really want to listen to different music in battles, just put your TV on mute and listen to something on your phone.
Yeah,
I mean, you can literally connect Spotify to the game and it will mute the game music and play your music.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't buy every DLC for Royal because I didn't really have the money for it at the time. I have 2 DLC packs for the game. I have what I think are the 2 most important: the Persona pack and the extra battle pack with the P3 and 4 protagonists. Because those are the really cool ones. Because there's the fights against the pro tags, which are just fun, and then there's the extra personas, which gave me Raoul, which is the greatest thing ever designed by a human. So
I will say this, and I will die on this hill. Arsene is the best designed Persona in Persona history, my opinion. Yes. But Raoul fucks, and that makes him number 0 on top of Arsene, who was number 1.
Man, spin.
Exactly.
When you're right, you're right.
I like. Apart from that, like any costumes, it's like, all right, well, you buy the costume DLC if you're a hardcore Persona or Mega 10 fan and you really enjoy, and like you want that music, you want those costumes or those characters you love, you want to dress the characters up in their Q models, you want to give Morgana the afro. Shout outs to Ash. And like, okay, the only DLC that I think is just absolutely completely egregious is the Kasumi costume pack, because that's $15 for a bunch of parts of a costume pack that you get for free with the like Legacy DLC. And on top of that, they are only usable for the final dungeon because that's the only time Kasumi's usable. Like, that's the only one where I think is just genuinely kind of really egregious and shitty.
Yeah, I have a bigger example, totally bigger, which is the fact that, and I don't know if I've done it before on this channel, but I think I finally get to rant about this here. The full bundle, the $60 bundle, shows an image for the red Morgana car. And it's only in Japan. You can't use the red Morgana car in any other release of the game. It's just not there. But they have the image there. I was cheated. I wanted my red car, and I didn't get it.
Oh, so one more thing I can say about this.
Go.
I was just gonna say one more thing to say about this. You can have issues with this costume DLC. Think it's overpriced. Think it's not worth it. Whatever. If you are going to tell me that Atlus is one of the worst companies for DLC, you need to take a long, hard look at the rest of the video game industry and then talk to me. Because no, Atlus is nowhere near the top of the worst. Yeah. Not even close.
Not even. And the single one thing, apart from the red car, which I did forget about, the single one thing that I would argue about the DLC is bad is that Kasumi only has one dancing outfit, and as as an actual dancer, I really like if they gave her 2. But they only gave her 1 for P4D, so she doesn't get 1 for P5D, which doesn't make sense because Akechi does get 1 for P5D. Yeah. So why couldn't Kasumi also get 1? That is my one complaint, is that Kasumi just doesn't get 2, and that's it.
I don't know. Anyways, this the last of the general statements, and this is more of an honorable mention, because I kept seeing this comment, and it's very specific, and it's not it's not really a real, I mean, I can't say it's not a real critique, but you'll see, is the amount of people who said, yeah, I haven't finished Royal yet, but Akechi sucks. Like, I guess they played vanilla and only vanilla, and then like played a little bit of Royal.
I absolutely agree. Before I played Royal, Akechi was my least favorite character. He just seemed like Adachi, but younger and forced into the plot more. Because I saw but I played Golden after Royal, but then I played Golden after 5, but after playing Royal and then going back to 5, my opinion shifted completely. Not only does Royal basically fix anything that I found wrong with him, and also made him my triple S character in rankings for that game, it gave me more perspective into what they actually were trying to do with him in base P5, and it kind of fixed like those issues that I originally had with him. And I know other people as well. Like I have a really close friend who's my designer for my channel, and they tell me every single time I talk about Akechi, they're like, okay, but he's just like dumb and stupid. And I was like, yeah, but you haven't even played Royal yet. Like play Royal and then get back to me, because I was the same. I hated him too, and now I love him.
I don't know, because even in Vanilla P5, like a lot of people, when Vanilla P5 dropped, Akechi was literally the fan favorite character, like by far in Japan. Like every poll was like, yeah, Akechi. And then there was like a shift a year in where people were like, Akechi always sucked. He was never good in Vanilla. And then Royal came out. They're like, okay, he's great here. Vanilla, he always sucked. But all of Akechi's biggest highlights outside of third semester, and I guess like his rank 8 confidant, like his biggest plot highlights were all in Vanilla P5, almost exactly the same. His plot was still there. The character is the same. The only difference is we get more context to it in Royal, which is good and helpful and makes him even better. But in Vanilla, I still, at least personally, got what they were going for with this character and what it was supposed to be. Even if it could have had more clarity, it's still apparent enough to show what the direction is, what his character is trying to go for, and the actual highlights of his role are fantastic in that game. So I don't really get the hate, but
he was my personal least favorite in Vanilla, but I still really liked him, and then Royal made him not my personal least favorite anymore, so like I've always liked him. I always thought he was great.
So a godlike game.
Yep.
Alright, so now that we've got those out of the way, it's time for some more specific tweets, if you are good with that.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna try to abridge these as best as I can. Yeah, so from Pegs 2, the game tries really hard to be woke, and while it does sometimes succeed, its comedy falls short and can be too, I don't know how to say it, me neither. They mentioned the bad treatment of Ryuji, and the big thing here is the way they don't like the way that characters are sometimes sexualized. Or no, sorry. The female characters are constantly sexualized in that game. And they mention that Ann's outfit works, but that, let's see, that Kasumi's and, what's the other? I remember seeing this before. I think they said Kasumi's was overly sexualized, as well as someone else mentioned, I think it was Makoto.
Mm-hmm.
And like, Ann's is very obviously meant to be sexualized, but she's like a femme fatale.
Yeah.
So I get it. You know, if you find it uncomfortable, that's fair, but I feel like narratively it makes enough sense. I don't get people who find Kasumi's sexualizing, or especially Makoto's, because it's just girl in biker outfit and girl in a leotard because she's a gymnast.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's
also
like I don't know, I guess it didn't have to be a low cut leotard, but that's kind of the only thing I could think of for Sumi.
And Haru is I cannot think of a single moment in the game where I would classify either Haru or Futaba as sexualized. Maybe like the stuff with Futaba's persona having like, you know, it's a spaceship with tentacles and like it picks her up and you're like, oh, that I know what that kind of means. Like, you know, you get that innuendo. But apart from that, for Futaba, I can't think of anything. And especially for Haru, I can't think of anything. So I don't know what constantly sexualizing the female characters really implies.
I was gonna say, and even with like Necronomicon, like hentai didn't invent tentacles, so like, yeah, I don't know, like the boys constantly sexualizing girls. If you mean, I don't know, like 2 anime cutscenes, sure, one of which they get, you know, punched for doing it, and the other one on kind of plays along because she knows Ryuji and knows he's not a bad person, and it's one of my favorite bits of the game.
Yeah, she grabs Ryuji's titties on the beach. It's fun.
She did, and it's the best part of the game. But like, I don't know, they're like 16, so like they're gonna be like that, and even then, like the rest of the game, there's still like a clear amount of respect between all of the thieves.
Hmm.
Like,
And it's really only Ryuji that does it. Like, Ren only does it if you make him do it, because he never does it willfully. And Yusuke kind of does it, but he does it in a way that it's palatable
dumb.
because he's artsy. So he's like, wow, the beauty in everything.
Again,
Like,
he's
you
not
know,
even
you're
attracted to An. He just thinks she's beautiful on a
Yeah.
artistic level.
yeah, and then Mona. So like, you know, I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. I've never had a major issue with that. And again, not to use Persona 4 as my stepping stone, but to use Persona 4 as my stepping stone to make my point. Like, Persona 4 had the scene where Yosuke very creepily knew the exact swimsuit sizes for Chie and Yukiko. Like, that shit's just weird. Nothing like that happens in 5.
That's on
Not
par
even
with
close.
something like Abed and Community knowing their period patterns, and it's Yosuke Persona 4.
Yeah, but Abed's different.
You know,
Abed's
I
fine.
appreciate Abed, and I appreciate Yosuke when he's not doing that.
Yeah.
Moving on, from Runruki. I'm not one to hate on Akechi, but I can say that Atlus made him one or too many things at once. He didn't need to be Shido's son. He didn't need to fake cases with psychotic breakdowns, especially when he shows the intellectual prowess to actually fit the detective role. Yeah, they did not need to expand on the psychotic breakdowns enough for a Loki exclusive ability. I don't...
Him being Shido's son gives him a major motivation for why he does a lot of what he does. The psychotic breakdowns, yes, he already has the ability to be a good detective, but the psychotic breakdowns in particular existed to be something that only he could solve, which would set him apart from everyone else and get him on TV.
Yeah.
And it's also, like, very integral. The psychotic breakdowns are very integral to Shido's plan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't know, like, is their idea to add another character to be the psychotic breakdown character? Because that I think would be too much. Like, I think just having Akechi kind of be, like, the henchman to the big bad, who's also trying to take down the big bad, it works perfectly.
Yeah, it's very efficient writing-wise, because, like, a lot of people don't think about this after the fact, but you don't know that Black Mask and the traitor are the same person before Shido's palace, technically. And actually figuring out, okay, yeah, it is the exact same thing, is a very efficient way of handling it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Yeah, I kind of disagree. I don't feel like they made Akechi too many things at once. He's, you know, maybe I guess maybe the one complaint I have is pancakes. Like, I just think that one line is such a stupid way for the story to be like, and that's how they knew that he had persona powers, is because he heard pancakes from a cat. Like, but that's just like persona silliness at that point.
That's the thing. I get that. I also feel like it is a kind of clever, because it's less about him saying pancakes and more, like, that's kind of the funny way to look at it. It's more so him hearing something that he shouldn't have heard, and it's using the mechanics of the universe established, and I think that's effective.
I would like to say, though, I honestly do not think that I don't think that any of the party members in Persona 5, including Morgana, who seems to have, like, you know, this higher level of intellect sometimes, should have remembered that he heard that all the way back in, like, April, and now they're in, like, November or December. Yeah, it would be December because it's the Shido arc. So, you know, 8 months later, Morgana just goes, wait, he heard me talking about pancakes that one time. He should only be able to hear that if he has persona powers. He must be the traitor. Like,
I just love the line, just like, you noticed it too, right? Our conversation about pancakes out of context is one of my favorite Persona 5 lines.
Oh my god. It's very entertaining. Moving ahead from Rugi, I know this is always thrown around, but there are times when Ryuji is just played for laughs and doesn't land with the scene. Best example is when he risks his life with Shido, girls beat him up, and then, yeah, the scene where he gets pulled away, which we talked about, that is dumb. From Megaten Snuggle Tweets, mainly the fact, in terms of criticism, that the entire stretch between Sai and Shido's palace is dry as hell. Is a dry as hell visual novel with one or two interesting bits in between. It's a pathetically easy game, and New Game Plus is laborious. Blah, blah. I feel like the big thing to address there is that first part about Sai to Shido's palace.
How?
That's like the entire unraveling of the climax. The part's godlike.
That's my favorite part. That's like my favorite.
It's so good.
It's
Like-
my favorite stretch of video game. Period.
Unless you
Like-
can not like sit still for like 40 minutes and are just like, why are they sitting here explaining the entire plan? Even though if they didn't, people would be like, how did they do this?
Like the one scene in particular that I think is maybe a little bit overkill is after they explain the plan of how Ren got out of jail. After that, there's the scene of Akechi and Shido talking for 20 minutes.
That's a bit
that's
much.
maybe a bit overkill.
I
But, like,
think
other
there's
than that,
I think there's a
like-
consistent thing with P5 where
mhm.
there's like a correlation between let's cut away to just the villains talking and
SIU
being-
director moment.
yeah, it being kind of unnecessary and dumb.
Mhm.
So like I get it, but it's
I just don't
doesn't
get
need
how
to.
this is the boring bit of the game. Like,
No, that's great.
This is one of the most exciting parts of the game, especially, and I feel like maybe they're just like, okay, I want to play the game, but it makes sense that you can't play the game at this point because you're dead. You're
Yeah.
presumed
Yeah.
dead for like the whole entirety until it's revealed that you aren't actually dead. So
Joker has
Why would you be-
perished.
why would you be playing the game if you're dead?
It's
like
uh,
yeah, the game has a pretty big stretch of cutscene, but it's such a great stretch of cut. The protagonist freaking gets shot. Like,
Mm.
how is this boring? Like,
Meh.
this is awesome.
Cinema peaked there.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. The contrast between the scene where he gets shot, where Joker gets shot, and then he just falls into his own pool of blood, and
Yeah.
and then it just fades to black, contrasting immediately with the cutscene where he's just sitting there.
Where he's back
Like-
up. Yeah, like,
Yeah, you just
It's so
like
cool.
that's just so good.
and the game plays it so well because you also have like all the party members being worried about him. You know,
Mm.
even though like they know there's a plan in place, there is the fact that yeah, they don't have a guarantee that the plan worked until they can actually see him alive. You know,
I was
like,
convinced that he actually died and we were going to play as someone else.
Yeah,
Until the last second in that cutscene where Ryuji smirks and he's like,
yeah,
we
where he
got
says
him.
got him. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
It's such a great reveal. And then like, you know, Shido pulls everything full circle and gives Ren the conclusion to his troubles. And the Psy arc is, you know, it's bringing the whole game full circle from the flashbacks and finally explaining everything and why Psy was your target. And this is like the best part of the game, I think, easily for me.
it's a grand old time.
What were the other parts of that comment?
It was just stuff about New Game Plus feeling like a chore, which then don't play it.
Yeah,
I know,
like,
I was gonna say,
the
New
game.
Game Plus is entirely a personal choice. If you don't want to play the whole game again just for one extra boss, then don't. Just watch the boss online.
Just listen to Rivers in the Desert and pretend you fought the boss. That's all you need. Like, I love that. Like, I love that bonus. Like, I love the twin fight, and you know, I'm actually going through Royal New Game Plus, and I'm excited to get to the new Lavenza fight. But like, you know, like, don't play it. Like, yeah, sure, it's a chore. You already beat the game.
If you don't want to play the
Alright,
game
you're
again,
done.
it's a long game. I don't blame you. You don't have
Yeah,
to play the
it's
game
true.
again. It's not an obligation. This isn't near.
Like, I would have liked it maybe. Like, I would have liked a new harder difficulty for New Game Plus because that's what Striker does.
Strikers is a good game.
I didn't need it. It's fine. Like, just don't play the game again.
Speaking of, because I want to segue with this a great quote. Speaking with getting beaten up by albino babies, is the Jose fight in Royal? What's the requirements for it? Because I did beat it and I wanted to talk about it. But what are the?
You can do it in the first playthrough. All you have to do literally is just after the first time you're required to go down to Mementos in third semester, you just go back to the bottom again. And he's just sitting there. He's like, want to fight? And then he throws bombs at you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and he runs you over with the car.
He's a
I
funny
could
guy.
not stop laughing in that
I
fight.
love that
It's a
fight.
good time.
What a ridiculous
It was
fight.
one of the only fights that killed me.
That too, yes.
This tweet is from Nam's Compendium, good friend, another YouTuber. Check him out. He says, I don't like the interrogation setup of the story. I find it really annoying when the game fast forwards to Sai just to spoil palace rulers. Takes me out of the game when it cuts back to Sai where she tells the player who the next target is instead of letting us discover them. I was talking on a podcast with Spencer from SMTN, because we're just going to bring up every Megaten YouTuber at this point.
Yep.
Um,
You guys watch Fither?
Let's go. I was talking to him about this on the last podcast I did, and I do agree with half of the sentiment. I think the setup of that is really good. I do like the, like, in media res kind of starting in the future, and then, you know, going back to see what happened. I wonder how I got into this mess. What I do agree with is, well, I don't mind when it cuts forward to the interrogation. What I do dislike is when it will spoil the antagonist or certain plot beats. I think that is kind of dumb.
I mean, I don't mind it. Partly because, like, I don't think there's necessarily needs to be I mean, I don't think there needs to be, like, because, for one... Because, like, Kamoshida, for one, the game doesn't tell you he's your villain until you realize he's your villain. And then, beyond that, like, there isn't really much of a reveal to have for the other villains, I don't think, because, like, none of them are going to have a major impact to the player, I don't think, because you don't know who they are.
I will say, I did find it funny, for Kanashiro's palace, the first time I was playing through the game, because you haven't seen the principal in a bit, and I didn't remember his name, I just remembered it started with a K, so they're like, yeah, this is your next target, and they slide him over, they're like, it's Kanashiro, I'm like, is that my principal? When did he become a mafia leader?
But also, I think that setup works really well because I think it gives me one of my favorite reveals in the game, which is when Sai pulls out the calling card and says, it was addressed to me, Sai Niji.
That's godlike, that's good. That's
and I'm
good.
like, that's
so
so great.
good.
Because, like, that's, like, the best way to reveal it. Because the way the game actually reveals it in the quote-unquote present time, I don't know, the flashback.
It's like offhanded from Akechi.
Yeah, it's basically just offhanded Akechi going, like, yeah, hey, you want to, like, change your friend's sister? That'd be funny.
Dude, that'd be kind of heck.
That'd be funny.
I don't know, I also...
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I honestly don't have a problem with the fact that they tell you who the next target is, because the game doesn't really do, like, it doesn't make any sort of effort to make the next target, like, oh, it's this shock reveal. Like, they literally just go, okay, let's look at this list of people on our freaking website. Oh, this person's doing bad, let's look into it. Okay, they have a palace, let's go infiltrate it. Like, it's not like, I'm trying to think of, like, an example, of, like, you know what? It's not like the reveal of Adachi, or even Akechi, where the whole game you're like, oh, this person is, like, actively doing good things. And then all of a sudden they're the enemy. Like, these palace rulers are just very clearly just bad people doing bad things. And it's very blatantly stated that they are.
Yeah, because...
Except Sai Nijima, which is why her reveal is really good.
Yeah. And also, you know, there's also, you know, one, saying Medjed as the villain doesn't spoil Futaba, and a lot of the other big reveals come after the interrogation is over. So with the big reveal of Shido, the big reveal of Igor, the big reveal of Haruki, like, none of those are spoiled in those, and it works better that way. I think I really like the way it's done. Also, I don't mind cutting ahead for each confidant. I think it makes each confidant actually feel important and like someone that helped Ren be the best Phantom Thief he could be.
I think it works in concept. I just feel like it's just really funny sometimes.
There are a couple funny ones, yes.
It goes down to a very specific minutia that doesn't feel necessary, and I feel like they had to stick to a template, but there are probably better ways they could have handled it.
I do like every single time Saya goes, what? My sister? She's part of this too? There's no way. But she does it like 3 times in like 3 different flashbacks. So I'm sitting there wondering, like, okay, does she, like, what's her stance on this? Like, is she believing me because I'm specifically pulling up her sister, or is she suspicious because I'm specifically pulling up her sister?
I think that's pretty good, honestly. I like that.
The main time it's brought up is the third arc of the game, and yeah, then like later there's her asking about who the party was and you choosing whether or not to sell them out.
Did either of you do that? I didn't. I couldn't. Like, I know that it results in a different ending, and I haven't even looked up that ending. I couldn't bring myself to sell it out.
I've had many a person get that bad ending, and it's literally just Joker gets shot and dies, and the game ends.
Yeah, it's just the same cutscene with Akechi, except once Ren gets shot, the game rolls credits.
Oh.
That's it.
Okay.
I've had someone save over their data after that, so that's their canon ending.
Oh.
All right, taking another step forward from Star Wolf. My biggest issue with Persona 5 is that after a long enough time, around 3rd or 4th Palace, the gameplay begins to feel boring, as it's the same thing after a long while. I'm not the person to plan out every day to maximize productivity, so to me it just feels repetitive.
I mean, because even if you're still like just kind of going to a palace, or like even if each day is just picking a confidant, that confidant's still gonna have a new plot for you. So like that's gonna keep it fresh. And in terms of gameplay, I mean, JRPGs are built on repetition.
That's the thing. I feel like Royal adds enough to your gameplay, though. I feel I'd say a lot more so than vanilla P5, if that's where the criticism's gonna go. In Royal, there's a lot more of a dynamic nature to your team, whether it's with their like persona traits or you being able to give them like skill items to kind of change up what they're gonna do, different tactics you can use and everything. I feel like there's a good amount of variety that the game gives you as you're going through it, depending on what it faces you against.
Also, this could apply to like any Persona game. Like, I feel like it's not something that applies to specifically 5, because I'm playing through P3P right now, and I do feel like there are points between each full moon event where I'm just like, okay, I gotta go talk to this confidant again and again and again. And I'm not really like doing any actual gameplay. Like, I'll go into Tartarus maybe like once or twice between each full moon, and I'll just spend like 12 hours in Tartarus clearing out every single thing that I can do, and then I get back to the other gameplay and I'm like, okay, now we're back to the boring part. You know, it's not something that, like I said, it's not something that Persona 5 suffers from by itself. It's just something that Persona suffers from, and then to an extent, just JRPGs in general suffer from.
And even then, I think 5 does it the best because 5 has the most stuff to do.
Yeah. If you don't want to do more confidence, just go play Tycoon for 30 hours and then
there's a lot of options.
Game. And if you aren't playing Tycoon for 30 hours, you aren't playing the game right.
Yeah, and if you really don't care about a certain confidant, you don't have to do it. Sure, you're kind of gimping yourself by not getting their ability, but you don't necessarily have to go talk to them. You can go do something else if you want to just spend... I mean, if you just want to spend all your days going to the bar and just beefing up your persona, go for it. Like, that's part of what makes Persona interesting to me and what makes it stand out from other RPGs.
To the next one. This is from Nader, which... You know, I read this one initially, and, like, I don't want to be too hard on it, but it did raise a brow for me. He says, my biggest issues are, and there's two things here, my biggest issues are how, one, Kasumi was used mostly for making people believe she was the antagonist, and then was just underused. And then second, that third semester is just tacked onto P5 instead of being a sequel. Now with the first one, they do double down below this because someone was, like, asking if they did that with Kasumi, and said all of the trailers made her out as though she was going to be the antagonist. I never once have seen anyone say, like, people theorize that she might have been an antagonist, but, like, that was theories based on what could have been. I haven't seen anyone say that they were led to believe that those trailers made them blatantly think that Kasumi was meant to be the antagonist, and that it was a bait and switch.
So, one, the biggest thing I can think of for that was the first teaser that wasn't even released in English of, like, Sumi talking about how, like, she doesn't agree with the Phantom Thieves' morals, which led to, like, a lot of theories of, like, oh, is she, like, sort of Akechi's, like, cohort? But even then, like the first proper royal shower immediately disproved that because she was clearly shown to be a member of the Phantom Thieves.
I want to mention real quick, because one of the things they brought up that I just remembered, they follow up saying one of the reasons it was led to believe this is because, there's the little monologue about, wish granting in those trailers. And they say, yeah, her persona is literally Cinderella, and it has the whole wish angle. I think what was forgotten here is that the person who grants the wishes isn't Cinderella, it's her fairy godmother. And Kasumi does have a fairy godmother. Her name is Maruki.
Yeah, and he's a 30-year-old therapist. So,
the antagonist of third semester, the one who's granting the wishes.
Yeah.
It's a really good, analogy. It's intentional, but it's not pointing towards Kasumi.
Never once did I think Kasumi was going to be some kind of villain.
No, neither could I. The thing that I definitely saw the most was, FemC, Yeah. Everyone was just like, FemC.
Which again was immediately disproved by the first Royal trailer.
Yeah, and then there's, I wish that third semester was a sequel instead of just being part of P5, which I've seen a couple times said. I disagree, because I don't think that story would need to be stretched out that long and kind of padded out like that. I know people want a spin-off game or whatever. A good video by Fort Snake of potentially if it was a spin-off that brought back certain characters from prior games, stuff like that. But I don't know. I feel like it plays off of the themes of the game in a really good way and rounds out the narrative in a really intriguing way that makes the game feel very complete.
And part of as well what I think makes third semester effective is the fact that you've been friends with Sumi for the whole game. So having her just be another P5 spin-off character wouldn't have made that as effective.
Actually, Kasumi was underused in the game before this point, and also Kasumi was overused.
Sorry, you're right. You're right both ways. Because that's my biggest issue with Marie is the fact that every character treats her like whenever they have to go save Marie, every character is like, we have to go save our best friend Marie, and I'm like, you've all talked to her once. And then Royal did a great job where it was kind of like, once you have to go save Sumi, everyone kind of has the reaction of, oh yeah, her, I know her, yeah, we should help her, she's someone in need. And then the rest of the thieves aside from Joker build this friendship with her. And it works really, really well. And that relationship is what makes it work. And that wouldn't work as well in a spin-off game unless they decided to stretch this out for another 20 hours, which, why?
I will say, though, on that tweet, there is one line at the end where it says, this got worse with Strikers. I do kind of agree with that. It does make sense that Kasumi isn't in Strikers, because if she was in Strikers, they would have had to show her they didn't have to, they could just not put her. But they probably would have shown her in the Strikers trailer, which came out one day after the Royal trailer, which kind of spoils the fact of, Kasumi existing. But
they would also have to make her not Kasumi.
Because they released Strikers after Royal, it kind of just sets up this, dissonance between, okay, this is what happened in Royal, and then this is what happens in Strikers, but the stuff that happened in Royal kind of is just either didn't happen because it's following vanilla P5, or it's just not mentioned entirely. I would have liked if they could have included Kasumi somehow in Strikers, which is the one thing I agree about this statement. But like I said, she's not underused and she's not the villain.
And even then, if a Strikers 2 happens, which is seeming increasingly likely, they can. It is not a hard retcon for a character to say, "Hey Sumi, it's great to see you. I wish you could have been here for summer. Too bad you were busy." Add that line and that solves the problem.
Yeah, she could have literally been anywhere, and it would make so much sense. She could have been at she could have been overseas competing in. She could have been overseas competing in gymnastics. She could have been finding herself as Sumire rather than as Kasumi, because she's been living as Kasumi this whole time. It's very easy for them to just
and missed the road trip. Anything's possible.
Yeah, she could have just. It can very easily add her back in.
Yeah, it's not a hard retcon to make. Just like 2 lines and bam, Strikers is Royal canon now.
All right, this one is from Strain42, another really good Megaten YouTuber. But I definitely don't agree with this one.
Okay.
Absolute garbage boss fights after the first one. Asmodeus, which is the demon name for Kamoshida, was so good, and then they all just went downhill from there. Sorry, but Buff Red Guy is not an engaging battle.
It's the best.
It's not
really
disagree
good.
more. That is like arguably the best boss fight in the game.
How do you get a 1v1 against the person who ruined your life and be like, yeah, I'm bored?
Like, boiling that down to Buff Red Guy is not doing that justice, especially since that's a 6-phase fight, and that's, like, only phase 5 through 6. Like,
Yeah.
he's literally a friggin' Japanese warlord with a spiky Liberty helmet on a golden lion made of the people underneath him. That then turns into a flying lion, and then a pyramid, and then he has like giant weights when he's showing that even without the people under him, he can carry his own weight. Literally carrying his own weight, and then breaks free of those in a freaking DBZ type like transfer. It's good. It's a sick fight. And then in Royal, you fight him one-on-one, and it's a you know, this is where you see my passion come in. And, you know, if you have the visual, I'm, like, waving my hands around like a madman. And it's... No, this fight is awesome. Like, I like Kamoshida's boss fight a lot. It's, like, a good introduction. In Royal, it's really good. It's got the new, like, Shiho and Mishima stuff. But even then, like, Madarame's fight's cool and creative. Kanashiro's fight is interesting. Wakaba's
It's
kind
funny.
of
I would say it's funny. I would say that Kanashiro's is the funniest because he's just like, you know, he's a fly. So he's just like rubbing his hands together and buzzing around the place. And he's like, oh, look at my big piggy bank. Like, it's very funny. I would say like probably the boss fight that I agree with that the most with the statement of being not engaging is maybe Futaba's against Wakaba. Only because eventually, like if you aren't leveled up enough to the point where you're dealing enough damage to Wakaba, it kind of just feels like, okay, fire off the thing again and again, and it kind of just feels like an extended cutscene at that point where you're just firing off the ballista.
Yeah,
it's a lot like the Rise boss in P4, where it's just kind of like, yeah, this is like 90% scripted, and there's not really much challenge to it. And I mean that's a thing I feel like every modern Persona game has done, because like the boss after you get Fuka is mostly just an introduction to her analysis ability. The boss.
Yeah, I was about to say it must be a Navi thing, because I'm playing P3P, and that boss where hers is the Emperor and the Empress, right? That's the two that you fight. It is extremely easy. Like, I had more trouble with the first boss and every boss after that boss than I did with Fuka's boss. So maybe it's just a
consistent theme. And because like what I also like about the way Royal's bosses, like okay, so like the first 5 bosses, each of them kind of introduce something new to you in a way, because Kamoshida is basically testing your knowledge of the mechanics the game's shown you, and also kind of being like, yeah, don't just use your brain, attack something else that's not just the boss sometimes. The Madarame fight especially teaches you about weaknesses and strengths, and, you know, knowing that, yeah, just spamming a move that hits everything isn't going to work every time. The third fight mainly teaches you about status moves, and that, yeah, putting enemies to sleep is useful. The fourth fight is mostly teaching you about Futaba's abilities, and then the 5th fight is kind of being like, yeah, use your brain, maybe figure out how weaknesses work, and don't complain when the robot runs away because it was your fault, you freaking mongoloid. So
yeah, also don't say the fight's bad, because it's not.
That's a debate for another day. I'm surprised they didn't.
You had that debate twice. We don't need to argue it any further.
You know,
I will say though, I really like Sae's fight, especially like in the immediate cutscene before, where she kind of phases between like her shadow version and then like her actual monster version, and then Makoto's just like, wait, what the fuck? Did anyone else see that? And no one else even like mentions it at all, and the story just keeps going. Meanwhile, you're sitting there and you're like, not Futaba, Makoto is like having a crisis right now.
Should be
Also, one extra thing I wanted to add in your video, Adam.
Mhm.
I don't remember whether it was the casino video or the Okumura's Palace is Bad video. You mentioned that if you go into the fight on your own, Sae just goes into the thing, like it just skips the initial part and it goes straight into the fight. I did that in Royal, and it's not there, and I ended up dying because I didn't have any party members.
Oh.
I'd have to test it because it should be if you go in by himself. It was at least in vanilla P5. Joker, because you're not able to break the glass, you basically just have Futaba bully Sai into submission until she transforms.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's not like that in Royal.
I'll have to test that.
The game. Like I kept him by himself as long as I could, not counting the maybe 5 times that I died because he's by himself. When it gets to the point where the glass is there, Futaba just goes, "We need someone to break the glass," and I'm like, "Okay, but there's no one else on the field. Who am I supposed to get to break the glass?"
Weird. All right. Well,
they saw your video and they took it out.
Oh yeah, P5 bosses are sick.
Yeah. Like I agree the
Also-
cover sheet is one of the highlights, but I don't feel like it tanks in quality.
Oh, so that's implying that they think the Maruki fight's bad.
Yeah, or Yaudabouth. I like Yaudabouth's fight.
It's good.
I like the Holy Grail fight, even though it's mostly scripted.
Yeah, it's
Like, it's cool.
all right. From Ristriel, On and Ryuji are very strong in their initial arc, but basically just devolve into their set character archetype for the rest of the game, which is especially demeaning for
Wrong.
On.
Incorrect.
I've seen this a lot.
There's a thing in the game. There's a gameplay mechanic. It's called a confidant.
There's a gameplay mechanic called the main story, even.
That too.
Yeah.
Like, I love, because like both of them, I can name like moments that they have in the plot that are great. Like On in particular, one of my favorite bits of the game that, you know, whenever people say how bad of a character is, nobody seems to mention, which is the bit where On was a major player in helping Futaba come out of her shell. Like whenever she lets the thieves into her room, but then locks herself in the closet because she's still trying to hide. Like, you know, everyone's just kind of trying to tiptoe around the issue, and then On is just kind of like, Futaba, do you blame yourself for your mom's death? And that's what gets her to actually speak up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like kind of getting like cutting straight to the point. And you know, it's also the fact that, you know, Makoto and Ryuji were very approachable people, so she's able to have a really good conversation with them whenever she's trying to come out of her shell after the palace. And Ryuji's entire sequence when he saves everyone from the Shido ship sinking, and I like them.
Yeah. Also, the stuff that An does with Makoto was really good because Makoto does feel alienated from the group because she's older than the rest of them, and she's the student council president, so she has this authority over them. But An's just like, nah, we're just like 2 girls in this sausage fest. You want to like go hang out? Which is great because at that point there are literally 4 guys in this group and An, and she's just like, I'm so thankful that we have another girl.
Yeah.
Thank God.
I feel like people just kind of stopped paying attention before they got to Shido's palace, because that dungeon, they only tuned back in once Ryuji got beat up, because that dungeon has very good, like, it rounds out a lot of characters' arcs in a really good way. Even Haru's, like, again, even if Haru could have had more, that's a good way of showing her connection to her dad and kind of her cares and, like, not wanting to be shoved around and objectified. Or On literally reclaiming her sexuality and trying to wield it against someone, and also using her bad acting skills. And then once they start creeping on her just being like, nah, let's kill him.
Yeah, and there's also, you know, the 3rd semester arc with all of their ideal realities, and again, their confidant, which another issue I've seen people bring up is like, On feels like a different character in their confidant, and to that I say, huh?
Well,
so
no.
One thing I feel like isn't
Incorrect.
addressed a lot is the confidants aren't an excuse to not have character arcs for the characters in the main story. Rather, fun fact, characters can have multiple venues for development. They have several different arcs they can go through. And so they have a side arc that's less integral to the main plot, and one that directly addresses a lot of what they've gone through in the main plot in a way that's more vital to the main story. They have both, which makes them double good.
Because that's the thing, it's like, alright, well, because I've always seen people be like, confident not a really bad way of telling story because it's quote-unquote optional character development. I'm like, alright, did you want the bit of the game where you get dragged away from being a Phantom Thief to talk to Ryuji about the track team? Like, no, the game gives you the option to do that in your free time when you're not being a thief.
You know,
that's what makes that work.
You could call true endings optional character development. Like, what do you...
Damn.
You could turn off the game and say the rest of it was optional character development. Like, it's not... Like, it's not... I wouldn't call it optional if you are blatantly supposed to do it and it's half of the game.
You know what? Not selling... Like, selling out your friends to Akechi, you know, not selling them out, I guess, is an optional plot conclusion.
That's what your friend... That's how your friend beat the game. But... Because on top of that, like a big comparison that I give, because people are like, P3 is so much better because, like, you know, most of the characters, all their development had to happen in the main story, you know, because most of them don't have social links. And my thing with that is I'm like, okay, but the problem that I have, and P3, super well written, great characters, but the issue that I noticed when playing P3 was because the guys didn't have confidants, every bit of development they got had to some way link back to 5's so that it could still tie into the main plot. Like, for example, Junpei, who, if you play the Femc route of Portable, his whole confidant is about, or his whole social link is about his relationship to his dad and, you know, how, like, he hates, you know, people who drink and stuff like that. In FES and the male route, that is one line brought up at the very end of the... I'm talking, like, a couple hours before the final boss.
Funny.
So, like, that's the thing. Like, that's what confidants are there for. It is to expand upon the parts of a character that don't relate to the Phantom Thieves.
Well,
because,
not, like, derailing the plot.
Yeah, because believe it or not, these characters, despite the fact that it's very important to them, their lives don't revolve around the Phantom Thieves.
Like, although I would love it, the game doesn't need to have a scene dropped in the plot where it's like, nah, we can't go into Sai's palace yet. Ryuji has to visit his mom. Now, I want that.
I want to see Ryuji's mom.
It's not necessary. Alright, from a video editor, absolutely dislike the lack of, or not, biggest criticism is the lack of changing music. While I love the music in the game, not having the daily music switch at some point, like in 3 and 4, the third semester's music can get really old really fast. Still a bop though, other than that, perfect game. Woo! It's a lighter criticism. I don't hate it by any means. I feel like it could have been cool if it did, but I think P5 already has such a massive roster of music. I'm not
110 in vanilla alone.
Yeah, and in Royal it's like 150 almost.
Yeah, so like, okay, because here's the thing. Because Royal doesn't have like, because because FE or P3 has like the mid-year shift in music. P4 has 2 different themes that change depending on the weather, and then it has snowflakes at the end of Golden. And then
I like snowflakes.
5, yeah, the way 5 did its 2 themes was basically if you're in, what's the area where LeBlanc is? Is that Kichijoji? No, it's not Kichijoji.
Yongen-Jaya.
Yongen-Jaya.
Yeah, Yongen-Jaya has Tokyo Emergency, and then the rest of the game has Tokyo Daylight everywhere else. And then during rain, you get Beneath the Mask. And then at night, you like I even though I didn't, I can understand someone maybe getting a bit tired of Beneath the Mask. I never did.
No, it's like one of the best songs in the game.
Yeah.
Maybe a nice thing that they could have added in Royal is if you unlock music in the Thieves' Den, you know, make a cutscene or even just make it so that you can go to that like the second-hand store in Yongen-Jaya, the one down the street from LeBlanc, and just buy an MP3 player. And then, you know, if you want to change the background music, you just use the music that you bought in the Thieves' Den, and you can play it at, like, different points. It kind of defeats the purpose of DLC, but that's for battle music. So I really like the idea that...
I really like the idea that Ren bought an MP3 player instead of using a smartphone.
Yeah, well, I mean...
He got a Walkman.
Just to have it, like in... What is it? In Pokemon Sword and Shield, like, the character has a phone, but they have to go to an NPC and get a key item that's a pair of, like, wireless headphones that they can then use to have to unlock the option in the options menu to turn off background music or sound effects.
I like the yeah. I mean, I would have liked maybe like a sort of like, I don't know, like a phone app that lets you change the background music to something else. Something like that would have been neat. I didn't really need it.
Yeah.
I think the game works fine, and also I never would have turned off Beneath the Mask anyway.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's a minor thing.
What was I gonna say? I will say, like, I do appreciate, because we do get like the music shift in third semester, like they mentioned, and I can getting a little annoyed of it. I didn't, but I get it. But one thing I do appreciate is that music feels like it's good, but it feels just a little uncanny, which makes sense because this music shift is happening after literally the world changed.
Yeah.
Like, it contextually makes a lot of sense for everything to have a different light to it.
I think this sort of like, I don't know exactly how to describe the song, but like, you know, not exactly happy.
It's a little
like,
droning, like...
Yeah, I can't remember the word I'm trying to find for it, but, you know, just kind of like this seemingly upbeat song, but with the context it's played in, doesn't really, kind of still has that ominous vibe to it that I really love.
It's got
not the best song in the game, but I love it.
It's got the screeching quality of the fishing song in Sonic Adventure.
Sure. I was gonna say as well, I mean, one thing I do, Strikers and Q2 do this, is the ability to, instead of having to change your costume, just have a shuffle of any of the DLC songs you have.
That's so good. I was so glad that I got the DLC for Strikers that lets you just put all the different music on. I did kind of miss the fact that, like, very rarely does the actual Strikers music play unless it's like a cutscene, because you're just shuffling through all the other battle themes. But just to be able to listen to something different every single time is really cool.
Yeah, because the way I did it was, for the first jail, I just listened to the Strikers themes, and then after that, rest. But yeah, so like, I really wish Royal would do that, because now 2 P5 spin-offs have done it. But no, they're still like, yeah, if you want to listen to the Catherine music, you have to dress up as Vincent, because, you know, that's what everyone wants.
I did just want to say, before we move on to the next one, because it's kind of related, I scrolled through kind of quickly and I didn't really see anything that covered this, but I've got a Persona 5 poster on my wall, so I kind of want to address it. This is probably my least biggest criticism. It's a very, just like a kind of personal thing. I don't like, okay, so this is my criticism, this is my tweet that I'm putting out. I don't like the fact that all of the characters, if you include every single party member, are all designed with black outfits, except Ann. She really sticks out. I understand why it's like that, because it fits with her character. It expresses that sexuality that she's claiming back. But first of all, black can be sexy. See the rest of the party. Second, it just kind of sticks out when you've got them all together in a group. And this even includes Kasumi. It includes Akechi's second outfit. It also includes. I
mean, I don't think Yusuke's wearing black. He's wearing blue.
The second party member from Strikers, because the only other character who isn't in black or in all black is Sophia. Like, they kind of, you know, you've got them all together and they're all in these nice, cool black outfits, which, first of all, obviously they look cool. And second, it thematically works because they're supposed to be thieves, so they're in the shadows. They're all wearing black so they don't stand out. But then you just have Ann, who's just like in all red, and she sticks out like a sore thumb.
Again, I think Yusuke's wearing blue and like white.
It's like a very deep blue with a decent...
Yeah, like I've got like the poster on my wall. His is probably the closest to not black, but everyone else is very much wearing black. Like even Morgana is mostly black.
And depending on what cutscene you're watching, Makoto's maybe wearing navy blue. But I don't know, I never had a huge issue with that, because I think like there's enough like visual distinction amongst them, even if like a lot of them are primarily black. Like Futaba has bright orange hair and a lot of green accents on her outfit. Haru's got like a lot of purple integrated into her outfit. I think it works pretty well for what
I do like that. Apart from maybe Morgana, all of them have like at least one piece of their outfit that matches the color of the element that they use. Like Ryuji's blonde and he has yellow gloves. Yusuke is a brunette and he has blue gloves. Haru has all that purple. Makoto has like the navy that kind of, you know, represents a little bit of
navy and white gloves.
The
Kind of a nuclear.
Yeah, a nuke. Futaba doesn't have an element, but she's tech, and tech is usually like that green color.
Green.
Obviously, An is red, and she is fire. So the only one who doesn't really fit that is Morgana, because he doesn't have any green on him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not a huge deal to me.
TLDR, character design good. Like I literally have zero problems with An's design. It's probably I would argue that it's the best one in the game. Actually, it's just the fact that it's not black. Like I notice it sometimes, and I go, that's gonna throw me off for like a couple of days. I'm gonna think about that for a while. But if they had made it black, she would have just been Catwoman, and I can see why they probably wanted to avoid her just being Catwoman.
I mean, I think the concept art had a version of her in a black outfit with like the red goggles.
Yeah, there was a concept. There was a concept art for black. I also think at least, I think red makes her stand out more in terms of like, it's not just like a cat suit. It's like the bright red cat suit with the cat mask and the really like cool boots and shit.
Yeah,
She's great.
I'm gonna try and get these ones out a little faster, so we're not here for 50 billion years, because we can talk forever.
I can.
From Wandering Writer, the inconsistencies between the main plot character development and social links is, I guess, bad. Sumi and Makoto have it bad, which that first part's kind of vague, but the second part, especially Sumi, we have this big reveal, one social link event about it, and then it just feels like, oops, never mind, she was right, no one wants her. How do you interpret it that way? So I guess what they're referring to is her feeling insecure about her, like, abilities and, like, her being able to do everything she needs to. And then us seeing that in the school they also see her as a liability. Which is just showing the terrible circumstances of her situation, which is also to help Maruki accentuate to him, yeah, she's in a crappy spot. I'm going to stop the world from keeping people down like this, so that I can resolve all this. It's for both of their sake in their development. I don't know if it's just she was right. What I don't
know what that means.
It's really weirdly put.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's referring to the fact that is it sorry, I'm choking a bit. Are they trying to say, when they say she was right, no one wants her, are they referring to the fact that Kasumi was right in thinking that no one wanted Kasumi because she was the failure compared to Sumire, and she was right to become Sumire as a result? Oh, sorry, other way around.
I don't know. I think it's worth just kind of leaving that one where it is, because I
don't get it.
I don't know. Up next is a grand old.
I was just gonna say, in terms of like the first part of that, of like plot and confidant development feeling disconnected or whatever. Like I mentioned it vaguely earlier, but like again, characters that can have more than one goal. Characters will have, they're going to have a different vibe to them when they're not focused on the Phantom Thieves, and they're definitely going to have a different vibe when they're alone with Joker and not in a group of 8+ people. So like, it's going to be a slightly different feel to it. They're going to be going through different things, and a lot of confidant, like where a lot of the Phantom Thief business, it's very big, it's very showy, it's very much about like, we got to do the things for the people and all that stuff. The confidants are a very personal, introspective look at them on what their personal issues are, and them being able to put being a Phantom Thief aside for a bit and just think about themselves and their own aspirations for when they're not being Phantom Thieves, because they can't exactly make a living off it. They have to leave high school at some point. So
it also depends on like each like individual player's perception of the events, because a big example would probably be not Futaba, An. With her confidant, like one person could look at it as, oh, she's just trying to get back into modeling even though she was sexually abused, which kind of negates what she learned, because now she's just like showing herself off again. But the actual thing that she's doing is that she's both reclaiming her sexuality, which is like her whole character arc, but she's also showing that despite everything that happened to her with Kamoshida, she has the strength to keep going with modeling, and she's trying to prove that to Shiho. And I feel like if you aren't reading it like into those confidants enough, and you're just seeing them as like, okay, this is a blanket statement, it kind of ruins that dissonance that they then have with the growth that they're getting as the fandom thieves, because you're looking at them as two completely different stories as opposed to something that's more intertwined. And I feel like I can't think of specific examples for all of them, but I feel like if I had enough time and looked through all of the confidant stories again, I could probably think of ways that people could be seeing these confidants that's making them go, yeah, this doesn't really make sense.